I would just like to start by introducing myself. My name is Susanna Shipton, and I'm heading our consulting and digital team here in New Zealand. Although I'm spending most of my time these days in managing the team, I come with a technical background in engineering, in computer modeling, and in programming. So throughout my career, I have worked with many modeling projects, and I was exposed to many challenges that I believe you are also facing. So we are going to have a look at specifics in sort of nature of the modeling projects, modeling workflows, what challenges we are facing, and how we can help it a bit to have a better workflows. I have structured the webinar to run in two parts. The first one will be just a short presentation to set the scene. We will then have a live demo of the system where we'll go through a simple workflow and overview of the major functionalities. So let's get started with the presentation. So what is Model Warehouse? It's a tagline, and in short, it's a storage, versioning, and maintenance system for models and modeling data. So when we speak to people that are in the business of doing modeling projects, there are a lot of pains that are shared among them. Some of the typical ones would be around the updating the models and how changes in the models can have a profound effects on the modeling results. And if those changes are not evident or documented or easy assessed, then we are all in danger indeed to provide the wrong results using wrong models. So it's critically important that we are able to track all the changes and document them in a coherent way. The next sort of second typical problems and challenge is something that we are all facing, which is ongoing change of staff and people that are new into organizations come across having to deal with the legacy models. And they always struggle with finding the right version of the model, sharing modeling data, trying to figure out what the previous modeling has been done, where is it stored, what are the limitations, and everything else that goes with it. So we can boil down those modeling challenges and group them into several categories. And of course, with the modeling projects, there is various stakeholders, and they will have their own specific challenges as well. But some of the most common ones are indeed dealing with the legacy models. Where is the model? Do we have all the modeling files? There are many models we have seen discarded because they were incomplete, or there was no knowledge documented of what the model represents. Missing parts of the model in terms of that, even if you know what it is, it just won't run because the file is missing. Or we don't indeed know what the version of the software or service pack or anything like that was used. In terms of the ongoing model maintenance, these days it is recognized that the models are assets. There's a lot of effort, time and funds invested in developing models, and every stakeholder is looking to maximize the investment, of course. So the models therefore are need to be updated, need to be maintained, need to be recalibrated, and then they are used for different purposes. So there's ongoing model maintenance and management that provides their own set of challenges. As I said, for the organization, staff changes is very risky in terms of potential to lose the knowledge that's embedded in the models if it's not documented properly. How to deal with the multiple versions of the model in the various locations and how to know what is difference between them. Managing the exchanges of the models that are going in and out of the organization, or indeed between the different departments within the same organization. Even if all that is sorted, there is still the business of ongoing maintenance and updates, either due to the asset changes, due to the plane changes, climate change scenarios, development scenarios, you name it. So all of that complicates and makes the sort of management of the models very important. As more and more, and that especially applies to infrastructure models, more and more of our clients are actually investing into these models that are considered as assets, and they do go onto the regular maintenance schedule. Therefore, there is always sort of uncertainty in how to manage that, but more and more our clients have one sort of master model of their network, for example, and they are trying to keep that as much up to date as possible. Keeping it alive and up to date with assets and planning data means that these models should be ready for development assessments and scenario assessments when the projects come, rather than having to wait for the model to be developed. So these are some of the scenes in terms of how the models or the place of the models have these days with our clients, with the utilities and consultants. So what is the common approach in dealing with these challenges? Well, most commonly it's for smaller organizations, one-man bands, everything is on top of their desks and on their laptop or their personal computer. In the organizations, of course, then that mess gets transferred onto shared folders on the network or on the cloud, indeed, if organizations have hybrid solutions. But so mostly the modeling teams that will come up with some sort of rules, and these would be folder name structure with defined names. Versioning information is generally then captured in either in a naming convention, or we try to jam as much as we can into the description of our files, or supplement that with README files or model log files that are meant to be updated manually and keep a track of model development. You can see here I've got one example from one of our real projects, and I imagine that it's quite familiar with many of you. You start with a revision or a folder. You try to put as much as you can in a file name, and then as you progress through the project, you just copy these. They're all full copies of the previous folder, and it sort of unravels quite quickly from there. So the problems with the common approach, of course, are various. The most common one and most important one is that these conventions are just too hard to adhere to. Logs are not kept up to date with the changes. Renaming is only partial. We rename some files and forget to rename some others, which just introduce the confusion. There's no support for teamwork. Files are easily overwritten, moved, or deleted. I remember an instance where we were looking for a whole project folder that just suddenly mysteriously disappeared from the network drive, only to find it a couple of days later, whole folder was just moved to another location. That is very easy to do these days with just a press of a mouse button. You move it and it's all gone. So these things are, need a little bit of more structure, I believe, or we believe. So why does these common approaches don't work for modeling projects? What are the main reasons, of course, is that in my view, the modeling project is not a single file. It's a collection of data that includes the input data, the documentation, specifications, guidelines, or other methods that are documented, modeling files itself, boundary files, metadata that needs to be kept all together. If we have all these individual files living their own life, that's not protecting our investment in a model as a whole. So we need the modeling files, we need modeling results, reports, everything should be kept together. In addition to keeping modeling files on the network drives, a number of our clients, ourselves included, have had various attempts on utilizing document control systems, most commonly SharePoint or OneDrive. Basically, we have given up on using that. First of all, due to various restrictions on model sizes, model types that are allowed in many of these systems. Some of them will rename the files completely or add a revision number to the end of it. And we all know that that doesn't work when the files are referenced within the model. Moreover, each of these files live the life on its own. It goes through individual revisions or versions, and it's very hard to recreate anything, any historical revision of the model as a whole. And in addition, there is no metadata that's specific to modeling that's missing. So how can Model Warehouse help? Well, our intention is to provide a storage or place where you can keep your models and all relevant files. It can be installed on your local computer or a network server or hosted on a web server. It is simple and it is secure access. It has a flexible folder structure that can be made with your local working directory and your own workspace for synchronization. It doesn't force everybody to have the same structure necessarily. It supports teamwork and multi-user with the file locking. It has customizable multi-level permissions for individual users or a group of users. It provides the full revision history for the models. That's easy to access, and it's got a certain level of automatic audit trail or capturing the model changes, most notably who has made the change, what has changed, and when. It also provides the space where you can actually describe in plain language what the model or modeling project is about. So in terms of the revisions and how often you save the models into the Model Warehouse, that of course depends on what you do and what is your role in a modeling project. But everybody understands that a model goes through various milestones, at least, or stages. And we can associate these milestones as revisions that we would like to be able to go back if something goes wrong. Here on the screen, you can see the typical model process that starts with the model build, goes through calibration, peer review, finalization, following the peer review, the use of the model. In this example, we have a flat hazard mapping. And then a couple of years down the track, we will start the cycle again with an asset update and so on. So if we mark these milestones and as the versions that we want to preserve, like a snapshots of the model, basically we would check in model build. That will include the modeling files and model development report, for example. When we want to continue to working, we will check out the project. We'll do all the changes locally. We will check in when we reach the next milestone that we want to preserve, which in this case is calibration. We will check out again, check in for peer review. And as we progress, we will have these snapshots preserved for us to go back if we need to. And so on and so on. In terms of best practices, of course, it really depends on what sort of modeling you're doing. Modeling of the networks is slightly different than marine modeling. That is maybe not as sort of in need of update and due to asset updates and things like that. But what we have found that you really sort of need to start by thinking about how you structure and or prepare a template for your typical jobs. Model Warehouse will provide you good assistance and framework to implement those structures, but you need to develop them to suit your job the best. Also, a recommendation is that for the utility, especially for the utility models, to separate the jobs or use of the modeling models of the network into two main parts. So one line of work would be master model, which we think is best to represent the actual network. So actual assets with the actual operations rules that is always ready to grab and start this new project, development project, assessment project that you need to do. That model needs to be treated as an asset. It will go through update and calibration and other maintenance steps. And then projects or studies that are actually going to use that master model is treated separately, either as a modeling project. So if you can see in a example here that I've given, we have a template catchment. It's prepared for the flood modeling, where we have some common folders like places to store the data, various data, documents, and GIS files, special information. Then we have a model master. In this case, this was prepared for Mike Flood. We have Mike Flood, Mike Urban, Mike 11, Mike 21 folders, and we have a completely separate space for projects. And one of the typical first projects would be, for example, flood hazard modeling, as it is previous example. Another recommendation is to try to minimize renaming. I know that that's kind of how we used to work with our files. But you can utilize version control, and over time you learn to trust it. You can utilize version control better and reduce the clutter if you don't rename. Whenever you have a urge to rename the files so that you can go back to it, instead you just need to submit it back to the Model Warehouse, and it will create a revision, historical revision for you, and you just continue working. In terms of also facilitating model sharing, so models coming in and out of the organization, Model Warehouse can be used for direct sharing rather than FTP or emails or OneDrives or any other mode. So if you open or configure your Model Warehouse to accept external users and consultants, you can open a space or folder for them to upload the outcomes of the studies, and also provide a space for them to download the information that they use as an input into modeling. Last recommendations from our experience is to reinforce entering comments for check-ins. This is really your your opportunity to explain to other people that will pick up on your work what is important about the revision that you are submitting. Very, very briefly, in terms of the architecture, so Model Warehouse is client-server application or framework, which means that the server installation is where all the data is eventually stored, all the user permissions are fine-tuned, all the administration utility is there to configure the backups, user permissions, archiving, and all the other maintenance issues, maintenance jobs on the web server itself. The clients, the end users are connecting to Model Warehouse using a simple Windows client that is configured by the URL link to connect to Model Warehouse. And as long as the user permissions are being configured on the web server, and when they first connect to the server, they can map their own workflow, workspace with a part of the Model Warehouse that they're going to use, and they're ready to go. The Windows client is what we are going to have a look into through the live demo. Okay, so let's have a look at this application itself. Okay, I hope you see my screen. So first of all, I will just introduce you to the main parts of the application. So this is the client application that I've just described. We have a tree view, which is very similar to the tree view that you are familiar with through the Windows Explorer. At the root of the tree is the what we call a warehouse or storage. And then you can have your folders any level deep. For the selected folder, we have a file area that will list all the files that are at that particular level. So at the training, we don't have anything, but as you change the selections, you can see that there are files appearing. I'll just move the controls. So you can search through the larger sets of data easily. There are some predefined searches, like you can search for checked out files or files modified last week or files not up to date and similar. If we, for example, select the first one, you can also select to include the subfolders, in which case it will show the list of all the files any level deep. I will just change the search. You can also just enter any search pattern that you want. So you can see now that I have a number of files. Sorted, the grid is sortable, so quite standard functionality. At the bottom, you will see at the bottom of the grid, there is another read-only area where you can at glance see, sorry, let me just check can't see any move from you on the page. Okay, let me just see if I can, just give me a second. I'm supposed to be able to change my, so you can't see the pointer. No. Pointer options. Let me just try this. now? It's good now? Okay. Okay, excellent. So I will just expand this a little bit. Yeah, where I am. This read-only at glance area has 3 tabs. So as on the first page, you can see the project type if it's assigned, platform, which can be Mike by DHI or anything else. And then if it's assigned, release and tools, and when it's the last changed, and by who. I will go just up 1 level up so that we actually have a more information there. So as you can see, this is marked as a Mike by DHI, release 2017 service pack. These are the tools used, and the working directory and everything else. So on at the description page, this is where the description can be entered. You can write as much as you want, or as little as you want. You're not forced, but I would recommend be generous with that. You do it only once, and it just sets the scene so that everybody knows what the project is about. You also, on the 3rd tab, at a glance, you can see quite summary of all the changes, historical changes that have been done to that particular project or a folder, and that applies to everything within the folder as well, so any level deep. At the bottom we have a just notification area. There are some of the actions. For example, if I want to check the status, that can be quite lengthy, so you can follow the progress in that area. Main functions that can be applied to either folders or files, individual files, are listed at the bar here and also available through the menu item. As you can see, I have run the status check, and this is probably the most common first action that you want to carry out. We will be using that later on, so you will see the more details in how is that used. So these are the main, I think, main things to get you going. We'll just go through a very simple workflow. So for example, if this training or catchment is a project and I'm new, and I want to work on this project, I can get that project to my local machine, download it from the model warehouse. Getting is going to give me only read-only copy, but I can also check out the project. So check-in and check-out are version control terms, and basically checking out means that you will get read, write permissions on the file, and also the files will be locked. So anybody else who is looking at those files will still be able to get them, but will not be able to work on them unless they remove the read-only flag. But in any case, they will not be able to then commit the changes back if somebody else has an exclusive lock. So what am I going to do now? I will just check out this folder, and you can see I have now an option to actually fine-tune what I want to check out. So what I will do, I will just check out the model master. I will not check out the projects. I'm not interested in those, and I'll check out the GIS. When I'm ready with the selection, I will just press start. There are a number of other options here. I can check out without replacing local files. I can change the root directory where I want to location, where I want to put the files, download the files to. As you can see, it sort of finished quite quickly. I have already downloaded these files earlier. So the actual transfer and download will only happen if the files are different, to save on time. So if we close this dialog, I can open, because this folder is mapped with the location on my laptop, I can easily find where that is. I will just open the working directory. And now I think I need to share this as well. Let me just share the screen. I think that that would be better because I'm shifting between a number of applications. So this has now opened the same folder on my local computer. And I can see that all my master model is here. And I can also see that my project is not there because I was not interested in downloading that. I can now work in this project, on my local machine. For example, what I'm going to do, I will change the ini file. And again, I'll bring this and I will change one of the settings. For example, exceedance of water levels. I'll change it to 50. I'll save my changes. And I close this. So in the model warehouse, if I check the status of my files, it is going to compare the revisions of my files locally on my computer on the location that is mapped with the files that are in the model warehouse. So you can see these flags have now changed and I have some warnings. And basically they are, I have 4 folders that are fully synchronized. So whatever I have locally is same as what's in a model warehouse. I have model master that has a warning flag. And if I drill further into it, I can see that it's further now leads me to Mike 11. And if I open Mike 11, I can see that my Mike 11 ini file is different on my machine than it is in a model warehouse. If I right click on this file, then I have an option to compare to a local copy. So I will do that now. And I will again move this from my second screen. Because this is a text file, there is a very simple and handy comparison tool. And we can see that these 2 files, the only difference is in a exceedance factor. So that's very handy, especially for those who are using Mike Flood or Mike Zero based products. Most of these configuration files are in text inputs or can be produced as a text inputs. And then you can very quickly see what the differences are. Okay, so I can now decide what I want to do. I can check in this file. And I can, I will give, if I execute check-in on a file, it will only give me that file. I can alternatively go up here as far as I want to go, up to the root, and also check in, which will then give me other options, not only for that file, but it also will then treat the fact that I actually don't have a project at all. And also that I have some other files locally that are not in a model warehouse yet. So depending on where you execute the function, it can have a slightly different, broader or more sort of simple options for you. But I will go back and just update, check in this local. I'll say yes. So basically what I found here that I have additional file called upstream flow, DFSO, in Mike 11, and it's asking me whether I want to add this file to model warehouse. I will just say yes. And I can rename or replace the default text here is uploading file and start. It will be transferred. Close that. And now it's asking me to upload the changes to the revision control that are marked here. So we will just leave it at that. So that's basically checking and check out. If we are quite close to running out of time. So I will just want to show you one more thing that I found very, very handy, which is working with revisions. Revisions are same as versions, and it's something that can be very, very useful when you need to work through previous work, or even sort of like a certain studies where you are changing boundary conditions and saving the, without the renaming, saving various milestones of your project. So in a revision history, revision screen, when you open it, you can filter your entries that you see between two dates, if there are projects that go ongoing for many months and you have a lot of revisions saved. You can also mark certain revisions as a favorites and then filter and show only those. So you can see that here I have a revision created today, 2 revisions created today. One is that I've increased the exceedance in INIFAL, and the second one is this uploading of inflow DFSO that we just went through. For each of the revisions, we have a message that's saved, that you entered when you were committing the file in. So with this one, I have inputted manually increased exceedance in INIFAL. For uploading new file, it just showed me typing, uploading new file. These messages can be edited. That's very handy when you mark something and label it as final, and then a couple of months later you discover some issues or fix some problems, and then that final suddenly is not final. You can edit the log message, new message, and what will they do is it will append the new message before the new old one, and that way you always retain the log of previous messages as well, which is important for audit trail. In addition to that, at the bottom of the revision screen, you actually see the details for each of the files on what are the changes. And that's called, listed under actions. You will see exactly all the files that are either modified, as in this case, or for example, edit, which happened when I've edited this whole folder into Model Warehouse for the first time. So this is another place where you can drill into the details of every submission. In addition to that, you can display some of the properties or metadata that you have associated with the project, and you do that very easily. You just multi-select, you get properties, and where the properties are assigned, they will be displayed here. So in terms of for Mike by DHI, we do have a metadata that you just select from the drop-down list, and that relates to the release and service pack of the modeling software that you use. And you can also select project type. For every single revision, you can retrieve that revision by Get Revision button. You can decide where on your laptop you want that revision saved, and that revision will be exactly as it was when you have committed it to the Model Warehouse. If you deleted files afterwards, those files won't be in. If you change some files, you will get their previous revision. That is very, very handy, especially I found it handy with spreadsheets. which are notoriously hard to compare, especially to people that are going through the modeling and updating the models and recalibrating and receiving the similar inputs in a similar, from, for example, population estimates from your clients. It's just quite hard to compare those spreadsheets, and being able to retrieve something, a project with all its files, all its spreadsheets, to the changes to before the changes were made, is very very useful. So I think that that's probably all we have time for. If you need any more information, either details on how Model Warehouse works, or on potentially organizing a trial, or more details about pricing and options, get in touch. We'll be glad to have the discussion with you. Thank you very much. Goodbye.